The emergency beacon cut through the void like a dying scream, its alien frequencies cascading across subspace networks that hadn't carried such desperate pleas in over 3 centuries. Deep within the Andromeda Research Station, Senior Communications Officer Zara Chen jolted awake as her neural implant screamed warnings directly into her consciousness. "What the hell?" she muttered, stumbling from her sleep pod as emergency lights bathed the station in crimson. Her bare feet slapped against cold metal as she rushed to the communications array, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that materialized in response to her presence. The signal was unlike anything in the galactic databases, ancient, primal, terrified. "Commander Torres to the comm center." "Now!" Zara's voice echoed through the station's corridors as she began the painstaking process of decryption. The mathematical patterns were crude, almost primitive, but the emotion behind them was universal: fear, desperation, a final cry for help from beings facing extinction. Commander Elena Torres arrived within minutes, her weathered face etched with concern. Behind her came Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's xenolinguist, his wild gray hair sticking up at odd angles from sleep. The 3 humans gathered around the central console as waves of alien data washed over them. "Origin point?" Torres asked, her military bearing evident even in her sleep clothes. "Unknown sector. Roughly 47,000 light-years rimward," Zara replied, her enhanced eyes tracking data streams invisible to baseline humans. "The signal's been traveling for weeks, maybe months. Whoever sent it is either dead or about to be." Dr. Webb leaned forward, his augmented hearing picking up subsonic patterns in the transmission. "The mathematical structure suggests a species with 12-digit appendages, possibly aquatic based on the harmonic frequencies. But the desperation, Commander, they're begging for someone, anyone, to help them." Torres studied the holographic display showing the signal's path through space. It had bounced off dead worlds, abandoned stations, and empty void for thousands of light-years before reaching their remote research outpost. "Have you attempted translation?" "Working on it now," Webb said, his neural processors already interfacing with the station's linguistic matrices. "The base language appears to be mathematical, which makes sense for an emergency beacon. Give me a few minutes." As the xenolinguist worked, Zara expanded her search parameters, looking for any other vessels or stations that might have received the signal. What she found made her blood run cold. "Commander, we're the only ones. Every major relay station between here and the source is either destroyed or abandoned. We're literally the end of the line." The implications hung heavy in the recycled air. The outer rim had been largely evacuated decades ago as the galactic core became the center of civilization. Their research station, studying long-dead alien cultures, was one of the last inhabited outposts in this sector of space. "Translation coming through," Webb announced, his voice tight with emotion. "Commander, you need to hear this." The alien words flowed through the universal translator, rendered in stark English. "We are the Keth Mori of the Singing Waters. Our world burns. The Devourers have come. They consume everything. Our children cry in the deep places as the sky tears open above us. We have no weapons that can touch them, no shields that can stop them. If anyone receives this, please, we do not wish to die alone. Our coordinates follow. We have perhaps days before the last of our cities fall." Silence stretched between the 3 humans. Torres was the first to speak. "How long to reach their position at maximum hyperspace?" 18 days, Zara replied automatically, then caught herself. "Commander, we're a research station. We have defensive capabilities. But against something that could overwhelm an entire planetary civilization?" Torres turned to study the tactical display. "What do we know about these Devourers?" Webb's fingers flew over his console, cross-referencing galactic databases. "Nothing in current records, but—" He paused, his face paling. There are legends, ancient stories from the first galactic expansion era, entities that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but dead space in their wake. Most xenoarchaeologists dismiss them as primitive fear responses to natural phenomena. Maybe the primitives were right, Torres said grimly. She activated the station's emergency protocols, sealing blast doors and bringing defensive systems online. What's our current complement? 47 souls, Zara replied. Mostly scientists and support staff. We have a small security detachment, maybe 15 trained soldiers. Torres nodded slowly. And our ship? The research vessel Curiosity. She's fast and well-shielded, but definitely not a warship, Zara said. Though her sensor array is probably the most advanced in this sector. Dr. Webb looked up from his console, his expression troubled. Commander, I'm picking up something else in the transmission. Embedded data about human settlements in their region. The Keth Mori have been observing our species for generations. They know about Earth. The weight of that revelation settled over them like a shroud. Torres began pacing the small command center, her military mind calculating possibilities. If these devourers are real, and if they're heading toward the galactic core after consuming the rim worlds, Earth would be directly in their path, Zara finished, along with every human colony between here and there. Torres stopped pacing and fixed both officers with a steel gaze. Dr. Webb, I need everything you can extract from that signal. Star charts, tactical data, anything about these devourers. Zara, begin preparing the Curiosity for immediate departure. Full defensive loadout. Ma'am, Zara questioned, we're actually going? The Terran Federation spent 2 centuries expanding into space because we learned one fundamental truth, Torres said, her voice carrying the weight of human history. When someone calls for help, humans answer. It's what makes us who we are. Dr. Webb looked up from his analysis. Commander, there's something else. The Keth Mori signal contains technological specifications. They're attempts at weapon modifications, defensive improvements. They've been trying everything to fight these things, and failing. Then maybe it's time they met a species that doesn't know how to quit, Torres replied. Begin wideband transmission to any human vessels within range. We're going to need backup. As the 3 humans worked frantically to prepare for departure, none of them noticed the subtle changes beginning to occur throughout the station. Emergency systems that hadn't been activated in decades hummed to life. Weapons lockers automatically unlocked. The ship's artificial intelligence began running combat simulations. Deep in the station's memory banks, ancient protocols awakened. Protocols written by humans who remembered when Earth itself had faced extinction, when humanity had looked into the abyss and discovered that the abyss should have been more careful about what it wished for. The Keth Mori had sent their distress call into the void, hoping for salvation. They were about to discover why the galaxy had learned to fear the sound of human ships dropping out of hyperspace. 18 hours later, the research vessel Curiosity tore through hyperspace toward coordinates that might already mark the grave of an entire civilization. In her cargo holds, hastily loaded weapons and defensive systems hummed with lethal potential. In her crew quarters, 47 humans prepared for a mission that would either save the Keth Mori or die trying. But in the deepest archives of the ship's computer, older files began to surface. Files marked with classifications that hadn't been used since the Centauri uprising. Files that detailed what humans were really capable of when pushed beyond their limits. The Devourers had consumed countless worlds, reducing entire civilizations to cosmic dust. But they had never encountered anything like humanity. They were about to learn why Earth was called a death world, and why humans were the galaxy's most dangerous species when someone they cared about was in trouble. The Curiosity dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Keth Mori system with the grace of a falling anvil, her hull plates glowing white-hot from the emergency transit. Commander Torres gripped her command chair as the ship's artificial gravity struggled to compensate for their violent arrival. "Sensor sweep! Now!" she barked as the bridge crew fought to bring systems online. Lieutenant Sarah Kim's hands flew over the tactical console, her enhanced reflexes processing data streams faster than baseline human consciousness could follow. "Multiple energy signatures, Commander. The systems... Jesus Christ." On the main display, the Keth-Mori system materialized in horrifying detail. 3 planets hung in space like broken ornaments, their surfaces scarred by massive energy discharges. But it was the things moving between them that made Torres's blood freeze. The Devourers defied easy description. Vast organic shapes the size of moon fragments, they pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. Tendrils kilometers long swept through space, dragging debris and what looked like entire cities into gaping maws that opened and closed with mechanical precision. "Count?" Torres asked, her voice steady despite the horror before them. 14 large entities, maybe 3 times that number of smaller ones," Kim replied. "And Commander, they're feeding. Those aren't debris fields. Those are the remains of orbital habitats." Dr. Webb stumbled onto the bridge, his face pale from the emergency transit. "Translation matrix is fully operational. I'm picking up scattered transmissions from the surface of the 3rd planet. The Keth-Mori are still alive down there, but barely." Torres studied the tactical display as the ship's sensors painted an increasingly grim picture. The Devourers moved with purpose, systematically stripping away the planet's infrastructure while something like a protective swarm of smaller entities circled the larger ones. "Any response to our arrival?" "Negative," Kim reported. "They haven't even acknowledged our presence. It's like we're too small to bother with." A mistake they would soon regret. "Dr. Webb, open a channel to the planet. Let's see what we're dealing with." The communications array reached out across space, touching the desperate transmissions rising from the world below. Webb's translation matrix worked frantically as alien languages flooded the bridge. "Multiple population centers still active," Webb reported. "Underwater cities, deep ocean trenches. The Keth-Mori are aquatic, just as I theorized. They've retreated to their deepest settlements, but the Devourers are following them down." A new voice cut through the transmission static, speaking in heavily accented but understandable English. "Unknown vessel. This is Deep Singer Kethal of the Last City. You should not have come. The Devourers consume all. Save yourselves while you can." Torres leaned forward. "Deep Singer, this is Commander Torres of the Terran vessel Curiosity. We received your distress call. What can you tell us about these entities?" A pause. Then the alien voice returned, thick with emotion. "Humans? But your kind are myths, legends spoken in the deep places. You cannot be real." "We're real enough," Torres replied grimly. "And we're here to help. Can you tell us how these things fight?" "They do not fight, human Torres. They simply consume. Our weapons pass through them like water. Our shields collapse at their touch. They have devoured 17 worlds in our sector. We are the last." Lieutenant Kim looked up from her tactical station, her face grim. "Commander, I'm reading massive energy discharges from the largest devourer. It's... oh no." On the display, the lead entity began to glow with internal fire. Massive tentacles, each the size of a city block, reached toward the planet's surface. Where they touched the ocean, water simply vanished, drawn up into the creature's bulk like liquid through a straw. "They're draining the planet," Webb whispered. "The entire biosphere." Torres watched for 3 heartbeats, her mind racing through calculations and possibilities. Then she smiled, and everyone who knew her took an involuntary step back. It was not a pleasant smile. "Lieutenant Kim, bring all weapons online. Dr. Webb, patch me through to the Keth-Mori on all frequencies. It's time they learned something about humans." Her voice carried across space to the dying world below. Deep Singer Kethel, you said your weapons pass through them like water? What happens when you use weapons designed to boil water? Before the alien could respond, Torres began issuing orders with rapid-fire precision. Kim, target the smallest devourer with plasma torpedoes. Full spread, maximum yield. Navigation, bring us to attack Vector 77 Mark IV. Engineering, give me everything the fusion reactors can handle. Commander, Dr. Webb protested, we don't know if conventional weapons will even affect them. Then we're about to find out, Torres replied. The one thing humans excel at is learning new ways to kill things that threaten the innocent. The Curiosity banked sharply, her hull groaning under the stress as she accelerated toward the nearest devourer. The entity, roughly the size of a small asteroid, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as it fed on orbital debris. It took no notice of the approaching human vessel. Another mistake. Firing torpedoes, Kim announced. 6 plasma torpedoes streaked across space, each one carrying enough destructive energy to level a city. They struck the Devourer's surface and detonated in brilliant flashes of superheated gas. For a moment, the entity was hidden in a cloud of expanding plasma. When the cloud cleared, the Devourer was still there. But it was no longer feeding. Damage assessment, Torres demanded. Direct hits across its feeding apparatus, Kim reported, excitement creeping into her voice. The creature's... it's wounded. Parts of its surface are cauterized. It's retreating from the debris field. Across the system, every devourer stopped what it was doing. Massive heads turned toward the human ship with motions that suggested intelligence far older and more alien than anything in the galactic database. I think we got their attention, Webb said nervously. The wounded devourer released a sound that transcended normal space-time, a bass note so deep it made the Curiosity's hull vibrate like a struck bell. Across the system, its companions responded with similar calls, and suddenly space itself seemed to ripple with hostile intent. 3 of them are moving toward us, Kim announced. Acceleration curves suggest they'll intercept us in 14 minutes. Torres studied the tactical display, her mind already calculating firing solutions and escape vectors. But instead of ordering retreat, she did something that would have surprised anyone who didn't know humanity's history. She laughed. Dr. Webb, record a message for the Keth Mori. Tell them that humans have a saying, when you're going through hell, keep going. It's time these devourers learned what hell actually looks like. She opened a channel to the ship's crew. All hands, this is the commander. We came here to answer a distress call. What we found is an enemy that thinks it's invincible because it's never met anything stupid enough to fight back. Well, today's their unlucky day. Battle stations. Throughout the ship, humans began preparing for war with the systematic efficiency that had carried their species from stone tools to star flight in mere millennia. Weapons technicians armed warheads with military-grade antimatter. Engineers rerouted power systems to feed the ship's defensive grids. Security teams broke out weapons that hadn't been used since the last major human conflict. But in the deepest parts of the ship, other preparations were taking place. Files marked with the highest classification levels began uploading to targeting computers. Weapon specifications that officially didn't exist were loaded into the torpedo guidance systems. The humans were about to show the galaxy why their homeworld was classified as a Class X death world, and why the one thing more dangerous than a human was a human trying to save someone else. On the planet below, Deep Singer Keth-Al listened to the impossible reports from their orbital sensors. A single small vessel was engaging the Devourers, and winning. Impossible, whispered his aide, a young female whose gills fluttered with terror and amazement. The star swimmers cannot be harmed. Nothing can harm them. Kethal watched the tactical display as the human ship danced between devourer tentacles the size of city blocks, its weapons carving burning wounds in flesh that had consumed worlds. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we have finally encountered something more dangerous than the devourers themselves." Above them, the curiosity prepared to teach an ancient horror that there were still things in the universe it shouldn't have awakened. The galaxy was about to remember why humans were survivors. The first devourer reached them like a living nightmare, its mass blotting out stars as tentacles the size of skyscrapers swept toward the curiosity. Commander Torres waited until the last possible second before giving the order that would either save them or destroy them. "Execute Protocol 77 Alpha." Lieutenant Kim's hands moved across her console with inhuman speed, her neural implants interfacing directly with the ship's weapons systems. What happened next would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy. The curiosity didn't retreat. Instead, she accelerated directly into the devourer's embrace, her hull crackling with energy as her defensive grids overloaded themselves into weapons. At the moment of contact, she released her entire complement of antimatter torpedoes at point-blank range. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. When the fusion fire cleared, the devourer was gone, reduced to its component atoms by an antimatter detonation that briefly outshone the local sun. The Curiosity tumbled through space, her hull scarred and bleeding atmosphere, but intact. "Damage report!" Torres shouted over the screaming alarms. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, came the reply from engineering. "Fusion reactor 2 is offline, and we've lost primary navigation. But we're alive, and that thing isn't." Across the system, the remaining devourers released sounds that made reality itself tremble. For the first time in eons, one of their own had been destroyed. The impossible had happened. "Incoming!" Kim warned as 2 more devourers changed course toward them, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. Dr. Webb looked up from his communications station, his face tight with concentration. "Commander, I'm receiving transmissions from the planet. The Kethamori are... they're singing. Their entire species is singing in harmony." Torres gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered under emergency thrust. "Translation? It's a song of hope," Webb said, tears streaming down his face. "They're singing about the Star Warriors who came when all seemed lost, about humans who answered their call when the galaxy had forgotten them." The words hit Torres like a physical blow. 47 humans against 14 entities that had consumed entire civilizations. But as she watched her crew work with desperate efficiency, she realized something that the devourers had failed to understand. Humans had never learned how to give up. "Kim, what's our tactical situation?" "2 more devourers closing fast, but the others have stopped their attack on the planet. We've got their full attention now." Kim paused, studying her readings. "Commander, the antimatter detonation seems to have damaged more than just the one we targeted. I'm reading energy fluctuations in the others. They're connected somehow." Torres smiled grimly. "A hive mind. Kill one. Hurt them all." She opened the ship-wide comm channel. "All hands, this is the commander. We've just proven that these things can be killed. Now we're going to prove that humans are too stubborn to know when we're beaten." Throughout the ship, her words sparked a transformation that would have been impossible in any other species. Fear became determination. Desperation became cold fury. The crew of the Curiosity stopped thinking like scientists and started thinking like the descendants of apex predators from a death world. In engineering, Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez began jury-rigging the fusion reactors beyond their safety limits. In the armory, weapons technicians armed their remaining torpedoes with experimental warheads that officially didn't exist. In the medical bay, Dr. Sarah Chen prepared combat stims that would keep wounded crew members fighting long after they should have collapsed. And in the navigation center, Lieutenant Palmer began calculating an attack vector that would take them directly through the heart of the Devourer formation. "Commander," Kim reported, "the lead Devourer is almost in range. It's... Christ, the size of that thing!" The entity filled their view screen like a living mountain, its surface crawling with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of intelligence vast and alien. Tentacles longer than the Curiosity reached toward them, tipped with sensors that could analyze matter down to the subatomic level. "What are they doing?" Webb asked as the creature's appendages swept over their ship without attacking. "Learning," Torres replied. "They want to know how we killed their friend." Her smile turned predatory. "Too bad for them that humans are really good teachers." She opened a channel to the planet below. "Deep Singer Kethal, this is Commander Torres. In approximately 3 minutes, we're going to do something very stupid. When we do, I need every combat-capable Kethmori to attack the Devourers with everything you have. Can you do that?" The alien's response was immediate. "Human Torres, we have no weapons that can harm them. You will in 3 minutes. Trust me." Torres cut the channel and turned to her crew. The bridge had become a temple of focused violence, every human working with the precision their species had learned in 2 centuries of warfare across the galaxy. "Dr. Webb, transmit our complete tactical analysis to the Kethmori, include weapon frequencies, targeting data, and structural weak points. Kim, prepare to fire everything we have at the exact moment we enter their formation. Engineering, I need the fusion reactors pushed to 120%. "Ma'am, that'll cause a cascade failure," came the reply from the engine room. "I'm counting on it," Torres replied. "Palmer, set course for the center of their formation. Ramming speed." A moment of silence, then Palmer's steady voice. "Course laid in, Commander. Ramming speed." Torres looked around the bridge at faces that showed no fear, only determination. These were humans who had answered a distress call from aliens they'd never met, traveling across the galaxy to stand between innocent beings and extinction. "Execute," she said quietly. The Curiosity accelerated toward the heart of the Devourer formation with every erg of energy her damaged reactors could provide. As they approached, the entities began to close around them like the petals of some cosmic flower, their massive forms creating a cage of living flesh. At the moment they reached the center, Torres gave her final order. "All weapons. Fire everything. Overload the reactors." The Curiosity became a star for 3 seconds. Her fusion reactors pushed beyond all safety limits as antimatter warheads detonated in a chain reaction that tore holes in space itself. The combined energy release was equivalent to a solar flare concentrated into a space smaller than a football stadium. When it was over, 4 Devourers were dead, their massive forms dissolving into component atoms. 3 more were wounded, their bioluminescent patterns flickering like dying lights. The remaining 7 had retreated to the edge of the system, their ancient minds struggling to process what had just happened. The Curiosity was gone, her sacrifice creating a brief new star in the Kethmori sky. But her crew was not. Emergency pods scattered across space like seeds from a dying flower. Their occupants alive thanks to the sacrifice protocol that had launched them clear at the last second. 47 humans drifted in the void, watching as their ship's death scream echoed across space. And then the impossible happened again. From the planet below, Kethmori vessels began to rise. Not the slow, organic ships they had used before the Devourers came, but new craft that glowed with human weapon signatures. The tactical data transmitted by the Curiosity had been integrated into their technology in a matter of minutes. The aquatic aliens had learned to make war the human way. What followed was not a battle, but an execution. Kethmori ships, armed with weapons designed by human military engineers and powered by desperate courage, fell upon the wounded devourers like a swarm of angry wasps. The entities that had consumed 17 worlds found themselves facing an enemy they had never encountered before, victims who refused to be victims. Within an hour, the last devourer was dead, its massive corpse drifting cold and lifeless among the wreckage of its companions. Deep Singer Kethal's voice reached the scattered human escape pods as Keth Mori rescue vessels moved to collect them. Human Torres, you have given us more than our lives. You have given us the knowledge that even the greatest darkness can be fought. How can we ever repay such a gift? Torres, floating in her emergency pod with her surviving crew, looked out at the alien vessels moving to save them. Her ship was gone, but the mission was complete. The Keth Mori lived, and the galaxy was safe from an ancient horror. Just remember, she replied, her voice carrying across space to the grateful aliens below. When someone calls for help, you answer. That's what makes the difference between surviving and living. As the rescue ships drew closer, Torres allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy had just learned an important lesson about humanity. They were the species you called when everything else had failed. And they always answered. 6 months later, the joint human Keth Mori research station in the former Devourer system would become the most advanced military installation in the galaxy, staffed by beings who understood that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be very, very good at war. The distress call that had awakened the galaxy's deadliest Hellworlders had become something more, the beginning of an alliance that would reshape the stars themselves. And in the deep places of space, other ancient horrors that had thought themselves supreme began to whisper nervously about the small, stubborn primates who had learned to make the impossible seem routine. Humanity had answered the call. The galaxy would never be the same.